What's going on, everybody? Joe here with JM Productions and JM Photography and Media. And today we're going to be taking a look at a beginner's tutorial on Adobe Photoshop and how to use layers. So with that being said, let's get started. Alright everybody, so here we are in Adobe Photoshop, and what we're going to be covering today is a beginner's tutorial on how to use layers within Photoshop. So what we're going to be looking at is a few different examples of how I've used layers to edit a few pictures and how you can use these layers when you're working on projects within Photoshop. But what I want to cover first is how to open a new project and then how to create new layers and delete layers. That way we can know what we're doing when we're working on some of these projects that I'm going to show you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top left corner and there's a little home icon. I'm going to left click that icon, and then what you'll see is there's a list of different projects that I've recently used, and on the left hand side there's a button that says Create New. If I left click the mouse on that Create New button, what's going to pop up is a different menu that'll give you different options for if you want to have your project be landscape or portrait, if you want to have it a certain custom pixel size like 1080 by 1920 or something along those lines. Whatever options that you as the user would like to customize in your new project, that's where you would set that up. The second way we can create a new project is by going up to the File button on the top left and left clicking that mouse. And what that'll do is it'll drop down a different menu that shows different options for your project. And there's a button that says, or a word that says New at top. And if you click New, that'll also open up that same menu for a new project. And the third way that we can open a new project is by pushing Control if you're on a Windows PC, or Command if you're on a Mac. If you push Control or Command plus the N key, that'll pop up that same menu so you can set up all your different options for your project. So now that we've learned how to create a new project, we're going to go ahead and go back right here, and now you'll see the thumbnail that I created for this video. Alright, so real quick before we get into my examples, I want to just cover once again how to create a new layer and how to delete a layer. That way we have a little better understanding of what we're doing once we jump into our examples. Okay, so on the right hand side, what you'll see is this Layers tab, and when you click that, this is the section right here where all the different layers would be. Okay, so right here you'll see that there's an eyeball icon, there's a preview of the layer that we're seeing here on the big screen, there's a title of this layer that says background, and there's a little lock. Okay, so each one of these elements, real quick, what this eyeball allows us to do is either hide the layer that we're looking at or view it. I'll show you that here in 1 second, just because this is a background layer, but I just want to describe what that is. And then right here you've got a lock. That indicates that this is the background layer. So what I can do is I can go over and click that lock, and now it says layer 0. So now it's no longer a background layer, it's just a normal layer. So now if I come to the eyeball, if I unclick the eyeball, nothing is there. And once I click that eyeball, that allows me to view that specific slide. Or correction, that specific layer. So now that we know how to do that, let's go ahead and look at how we can create a new layer. So there's a few different ways we can do that. So what I can do is I can move the little hand icon, and I can left click on the mouse onto the layer that I want to duplicate, and I can go down in the bottom right corner, this little piece of paper with the bottom left arrow, or with the bottom left corner folded up, and just drop it there. And now you'll see that it says layer 0 copy. So it literally just copied that layer. So that's one way we can create a new layer. Another way we can do it is by duplicating a specific layer. So what I mean by that is, if you highlight the specific layer that you'd like to duplicate, you can go over to the keyboard and you push Control or Command J. And now you'll see it did the same exact thing. It made layer 0 copy, and now it copied that, so it made layer 0 copy 2. Alright. So now, another way we can create a new layer is by pushing Control or Command and Shift plus the N key. And what that'll do is it'll bring up a little menu that says New Layer, and you can name it, you can change the color, you can change the modes and the opacity, a few different options. And the last way that we can do it is by pushing Control or Command, Shift, Alt, and the N key. And now you'll see on the right hand side here, a brand new layer popped up, but the preview shows that there's nothing in that layer. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is click the eyeball icon on the bottom 3 layers and only view the top layer. And you'll see that here on the right hand side, this layer is the only one that's visible and there's nothing there. So that Control or Command, Shift, Alt, and N creates a brand new blank layer. Alright, so let's go ahead and make these layers visible. So now that we know how to create new layers, let's look at how to delete the layers. So this top layer, if I want to delete that, I can either push backspace or delete, and now you'll see that that layer just disappeared. Or what I can do is I can left click on the slide or the layer that I want to get rid of, and I'm going to drag it down to the bottom right corner where there's a trash can. And now you'll see that that layer is also gone. Alright. One last thing I want to show you. I'm going to go ahead and push Control or Command J on layer 0 copy, and now you'll see it made another layer 0 copy too. So one way that I can select specific layers is by going to the layer that I'd like to select. So right now layer 0 copy 2 is selected, and if I went down to layer 0, I push Control or Command and click that layer, and now only those 2 are selected, but not layer 0 copy. So what that allows me to do is select specific layers that I want and then get rid of them by taking them to the trash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take layer 0 copy, and then I'm going to go to layer 0 copy 2 and push Control or Command, left click with the mouse, and now I'm going to drag both of those down to the trash can, and you'll see that we have the normal layer that we started with. Alright. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and close this. So what we're going to see is this is the thumbnail that I created for this video, and you'll see that over here on the right hand side in our layers section, all of these are the different layers that we used to create this thumbnail. So what we're going to do is look at this and 3 other examples and see how we can use layers to create a project. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hide all of these layers except for the very bottom layer. So right now this is just a navy blue layer that we're going to use as the background. So the first thing I did, if you look on the right, I renamed all of these layers, and the reason for that is because it makes it easier to move layers around if you want to change certain elements that I'll show you here in a sec. So the first thing I did, I created this rectangle that goes across the bottom, and then I added some text. So I put in for beginners, so we know that, okay, this tutorial is going to be for beginners. And then in this layer I added the Photoshop logo. So once I did that, I needed to put something in this whole section, so I added the word how using the text, and I wanted to have we'll show you how to use. Now it looks kind of funny that these are off center, right? But what I did was I created different rectangles within this thumbnail so it would accentuate the words. And the way I did that was by using different layers. So there's a layer specifically for this box behind how, there's a layer for this box behind the word use, and there's a layer behind this box for to. So now real quick, what you'll notice is the word to, the blue box going around it, is on top of the gray boxes. The way that I did that was by layering all these different layers in a way that the blue box around the word to is on top of how and use. So if you look to the right, over here in the layers portion, I'm going to go ahead and left click the box that says to, and I'm going to hold Control and left click the rectangle to layer. So what I can do is, since those are both highlighted, I'm going to drag those down so they're below the how and the use boxes, and you'll see what happens to the blue box. Now you'll notice that blue box is below the gray box around how and use. And the reason for that again is because the to and the rectangle behind the word to are both lower on the layers section than the boxes that have how and use. So now if I drag them back up to the top above use, now you'll see that the blue box is on top again. So this is kind of giving you an idea of how we can use layers to make certain items lie on top of or below other entities within a Photoshop project. Okay, and now the last thing that I did, I took the word layers, which you cannot see, and the reason you can't see it is because I sampled the color from this navy blue and I made that the text that's right here on the icon. But now what you'll see is when I click this rectangle layers and I view that slide, layers is there. So I'll show you right here with this layers right here. If I click the eyeball, it's hiding, it's no longer visible. But if I click the eyeball icon one more time, now it's there. Alright, so that's an idea when we're using layers for a Photoshop project.
Hey everybody, before we get back to our tutorial on how to use layers in Adobe Photoshop, I just wanted to say, if you're getting value out of this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. It'll help us out. Now back to the tutorial.
So now let's go ahead and look at an example of a photo that I took. So this picture I took, I really liked the car, so I just snapped a quick picture of it. Okay, so this is an idea of how we can use layers within Photoshop when we're editing pictures. So what I did was I went ahead and edited this photo in Lightroom, and this is the result that I got. Okay, so I went ahead and edited it the way I wanted to, and I made it so that this is kind of how I wanted the photo to look. But now what you'll see on the right hand side and the left hand side, there's a car and a truck. So now what I had to do was I had to use the clone stamp tool in order to remove those items. So in this tutorial I'm not going to cover the clone stamp tool because I actually made a separate tutorial for the clone stamp tool and how we can use that in Photoshop. So I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description so you can check that out. But what I'm going to show you here is when I view this layer that's labeled 1950, what you're going to notice is the truck on the right and the car on the left are gone, and then the 1950 should pop up on the license plate. So it'll look something like this. Alright, so again I'm going to hide these two layers, and this will show you kind of how layering all these different layers on top of each other can change the way a photo looks once you make all the edits. So again, here's the Lightroom edit of the photo. And then now, after using the clone stamp tool, we've got something like that. Okay. So another example I want to show is this photo that I took, and I edited the image the way I wanted it. But the reason I wanted to show this is because you'll notice there's a masking right here labeled color fill. Okay, I'm not going to go into masks and layer masking in this tutorial because again this is just a beginner's tutorial for how to actually use layers, but I just wanted to show you an example of how we can use layers to edit colors in photos. So what I did was I decided I wanted to make this leaf a little bit different shade of green. So I used masking techniques and a couple other techniques, but this is what it looks like when I show the layer with the mask on it. So you'll notice the leaf just turned a little bit more green. Again, this is just a rough idea of how we can do it. In a real situation, I would spend a little more time editing and everything, but this is just a beginner's tutorial showing how you can use different colors using layers within Photoshop. So again, that's the original. and then here's what it looks like when you add green to this specific layer. So you'll notice the green did not affect anything else in the photo except for that leaf. And the last example I want to show, this is another thumbnail that I did for one of the Adobe Premiere Rush tutorials. So this is another example of how we can use layers in Photoshop to create different projects. So this is the finished project, and I'm going to go ahead and hide all of the layers except for the original photo. Alright, so what I did was I took this photo, and the first thing I wanted to do was hide these stickers on the computer. So now the only thing that got affected was the fact that you can no longer see these stickers on the computer. The next thing I did was some light corrections. There were some shadows and some different coloring issues that I didn't really like with the way that the photo turned out, so I edited it just a little bit. And so when I did that, here's what some of the color corrections look like. You'll notice it just brings a little bit more contrast to my skin tones and to the shirt. And so the next thing I did, I wanted to add the YouTube logo to the top. So this layer was specifically for the YouTube logo, so there it is on top. The next layer on top of that is specifically for the Rush logo for Adobe Premiere Rush. And then there's a text layer for just the plus sign. And now the last thing that I did, again, I'm not going to cover layer masking and all those different things, but instead of having this entire screen on the laptop show up as that YouTube search, what I did was I took a thumbnail that I had created and I made a layer mask to cover up the screen, so it looks something like this. So what you'll notice is right here where it says Adobe Premiere Rush, the red box is on top of the purple but below the white. So again, that just has to do with how I arranged all the different layers within Photoshop. So that covers everything in this beginner's tutorial for how to use layers. I'm going to create a follow-up tutorial to this that is going to go into a few other items, so stay tuned for that. But as of right now, go ahead and take all of these things that we've covered and try them out and let us know what you think.
Alright everybody, so that concludes our beginner's tutorial on Adobe Photoshop and how to use layers. If you have any questions or comments whatsoever, or if you'd like to see more tutorials on how to use layers in Adobe Photoshop, please stop by that comment section and let us know what you think. Also, if you got good value out of this video, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. It'll really help us out. So again, thanks for stopping by. I'm Joe with JM Productions and JM Photography and Media. We'll see you soon.